Make sure we're recording and everything. Welcome to our September 2024 release recap. My name is Amanda. I'm going to be talking about inventory and USAS first and then inventory. So, okay, if you have questions along the way, I've got my chat open, so please let me know, or feel free to unmute. But I'll go ahead and get us started today then. Okay. So, for USAS, we had 4 releases in the month of September, and they were all regular releases. We kind of had an extra one slipped in there, and I'll talk about what that was for. Okay, let me resize here. I think we're zoomed in enough. Okay. So for bug fixes, we had quite a few of these in here. So we'll go through those first. The first thing, we fixed an issue where the current period wasn't properly updated. It wasn't showing up as updated. I changed the wording on this a little bit from the release notes, but it wasn't properly updated when a new posting period was created with the current flag checked. So what was happening is it was mostly like a caching issue. So the information, it wasn't showing properly. So it would be, what was happening is if they closed the month and they made the next one current, they would basically like still see the old month in the top corner. I know that happened to a couple districts, so that may be something that you got questions about. And ultimately it righted itself after 20 minutes or so because it was actually changing in the software. It just wasn't showing right. So we went ahead and fixed that, so that shouldn't happen anymore. And then the next thing was, so this was listed as a bug fix, but it is like something sort of new. So we corrected the certification and appropriation resolution reports to include both the CSV and Excel data report formats. If you've had treasurers that have used this report in our software for some time, for years, it did used to be there, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. And so that's why it's a bug fix, because something had changed it where then it hadn't been working. But now if they go to run, so their appropriation resolution, their certificate of balances reports, those all now have a spreadsheet version, so they can run it as Excel data or as CSV. So I know there are points where they run those throughout the year, but by next fiscal year probably is when that one will be big. So we wanted to make sure we got that done in plenty of time so that it's there for next year for sure. All right. And then we also corrected the accounts payable report. There was an error when they were trying to generate an Excel data. So that was fixed. And then on the requisition approval report, so this one is a newer one that we have. There was an option that, and this is for districts that are using workflows. There was an option where you select the status of like the rec approval. So like, is it approved? Was it rejected? Like that sort of thing. Now, pending is technically a status that the recs can be in, but that is before they would be submitted. So it doesn't make sense for this report basically. So if we go to the requisition approval report, that's just this select statuses. So basically we're cleaning this up a little bit and just removing, so that when you run this, like you would actually be running requisitions that are in the approval process. And so that status wouldn't qualify. All right. Then we had some account change updates. So they're working on a couple things here. We corrected a problem with the account change process that prevented a valid account change due to the vendor had a canceled invoice. If I'm remembering correctly, I believe this was like a very specific situation where like the process with the PO is it had been, issued as one check, voided, and then updated and then issued again. And so it was like kind of a very specific situation, but when the account change went to run, it does actually update the account on the transactions that had that old account in the fiscal year. So it was looking at that and it was recognizing this error kind of related to like invoice processing basically, and it was flagging the account process, even though, regardless of that situation, we'd still actually want the account to be changed as part of the process. So that was corrected to prevent that from happening in the future, if anybody else runs into that specific situation. um Corrected the account change process to properly roll back changes when an error is encountered. So basically, if something stops the account change partway through, if it gets an error, it's not going to leave the account change just like half done, because then it's, difficult to know like where at in the process um, it stopped. So then, once that error can be prevented or fixed, then it can be run again. And then we also refactored account change to check for open prior fiscal years and produce an error if it exists, and have that happen earlier in the process. Okay. So those were the bug fixes for USAS. Next, we have improvements. So we updated the payable performance. So this is, with posting payables to disbursements, so that payable grid, that performance related to that has been updated. I thought I combined my account change updates here too, but I missed one up here. So we added some logging for the account change process. And then we updated the HTTP utility to prevent thread leaks. So I looked into this one because I think this one's a bit more on the techie side. And this is actually something that we kind of did across other applications as well. So this was a change in common. And so basically like a preventative measure that we made to multiple applications. And thread leaks, usually I see those associated with errors. Or with like processing time. So, that's just something that I don't expect that we'll actually see like a difference, in like how the software looks or anything related to that. It's something in the background that'll help the software. All right. And then I also have account change updates that were included in the improvement section. So this month, a lot related to account change. I think they had a couple things on the list, and then some of this other stuff they were able to like also do as well while they were looking at it. So this one, this improvement is that we improved how the posting periods are handled when account change happens. So account change itself, when you run that account change, or when they run that account change, like they pick the fiscal year, right? So when you choose to run that, it's going to go in and it's going to look at the old account and it's going to look for any transactions related to that old account, if that's a PO, if that's disbursement, and so on. And then it actually changes the account on those transactions from the old account to the new account. That's why we use account change, right? Versus just, moving money. So because it's doing that, it's going to go back to July of whatever year is chosen. And it's actually going to be changing transactions in all of those periods up until whatever month they do the change in. So when that happens, the software does have to basically edit transactions in closed periods if they've already closed periods in their year. So and it's been like a couple years now, but at one point it used to actually kick off the monthly bundles and we stopped it from doing that. So right now what happens is they don't see much, when they're running the account change, but it does actually go in and open and close the posting period, or it did actually open and close the posting periods in the process, where this grid right here is your posting period grid. And so the reopen date could be would have been like changed before, and it would be like due to that account change process. That's what we changed. So now the posting periods, they're not going to be reopened the same way as part of the account change process. So when you go into that posting periods grid, like it's going to actually have the reopen date the last time that a district person or, you know, a user in the software actually reopened the period, not due to this, you know, district process, because they're probably using that reopen date to say, hey, when did I go in and when did I, you know, if I reopen this period, I want to know, not just the automated process. And also, like, I've seen in the past, it's rare, but it's been something where like an odd error might happen, and like if it was partway through, then like some of the posting periods weren't reclosed. It was rare, and we've already talked about some other changes we made to bug fixes to have better error handling. But that's another thing where now that we've made this change so that the posting periods don't reopen like visibly like on in that same way, but the account change can still edit the accounts. That's going to prevent some other like oddities that could happen, that we've seen in the past, I guess, with account change. So all of these updates meant to make that process go smoother. That said, the account change process does still work the same. So this is like how it's functioning. It's not actually reopening these periods anymore. However, the transactions affected as part of the process will still be updated to reflect the change in accounts. The outcomes of the account change are still going to be the same. So even though the system's not actually opening those periods anymore, it's still able to go edit the transactions that it needs to edit for the fiscal year. So that part is not changing. And so then how that works as it does, you know, previous to this is, you know, if you run the account change and then you were to go look back at those accounts as of July of the year, it would be reflecting as of the new accounts. So so yeah, so kind of not really a big change there that you may see, but for districts that may want to refer to those reopen dates, that's going to be pretty big. And then again, that also I believe will help prevent, you know, some odd issues that we've seen along the way. Um, so that's helpful, a helpful update there. And then we also improved exception handling and error logging for account change. The last thing that I have on my list for improvements is updates to the anonymizer. So they are working on a way to anonymize the data. This was an update along the way. I'm not sure yet I don't know that it's like fully ready for like pulling and anonymizing, so we're still having some internal conversations about that, but it is in the works. And you know, certainly when there's a way to utilize that, if it can be utilized through those of you that host like through VRA, I believe that's being discussed. So when that's ready, we'll definitely let you know the process for that. Okay. Okay, next I have new features. So implemented mini orange MFA integration. This has to do with multi-factor, like two-factor security. There is an integration guide that's linked in here, and this has additional details to integrate with Duo security. It has a walkthrough here and the details. So if that is something that you are using, that information is there. This is something you're going to hear a couple times today. This was why we had the extra release in USAS too, because we did put this out in all the softwares. So that was added. And we had some internal updates. So created a REST controller for the cash reconciliation and for receipts. These are, again, internal. It's something that's being updated in the background with the software. Okay. Any questions about USAS? And then I'm going to hop over to inventory and go ahead and talk about that while I'm talking. Okay. All right, let me scroll past USPS real quick here. So likewise, we also had 4 updates for inventory. There was one hot fix that was included this month, or last month, I should say. which, by the way, how did we get to October, y'all? That's very, very wild that we're already in fall, but we're moving right along this year. Okay. All right, so for inventory, a couple of things here for the bug fixes. When closing the fiscal year, the reset depreciation process, it was corrected to reflect the total amount of depreciation if the transaction is flagged as a reset. They should equal the reset amount plus the year-to-date amount. So this is specific to, when they're actually closing the fiscal year, that depreciation gets calculated and then updated. And so this made sure that it's calculating to the appropriate formula. Next, we have corrected the logic on the schedule of change in fixed asset summary to properly report beginning balances when an item has an error adjustment. Now, I didn't have an example with an error adjustment. I just quickly grabbed a screenshot of like, here's the report. When you have this, you'll see it. So this is the schedule of change in fixed assets, and then it's the summary version. So it's where we have all of our columns. We have our beginning value, added, disposed of, transfers, etc. So the adjustment amount column over here is if there was something that was marked as an error adjustment, which that can happen on the acquisition. If it was marked as an error adjustment, then it shows in this adjustment column here. So what the issue was, is that it also wasn't properly calculating the beginning value when there was an error adjustment. So that is fixed. So, it should be the beginning values will be accurate, and then your acquisition gets added minus disposition. The adjustment's calculated in there for the ending balance. Okay. And then last for the bug fixes, we fixed a null error when closing the fiscal year related to dispositions with a null date. This issue also contains a patch to remove data for a specific district. So yeah, I believe this one was based on like a specific situation, where a district had somehow gotten in their dispositions with blank dates. So null is blank, so if it has a blank field in there. And so when closing the fiscal year, it was basically trying to look at certain data that didn't have a date. And since, the fiscal year process, it's, it's using dates for certain calculations. So it was getting an error, but that's fixed now. And then we also went in and had a patch to remove data for a district.
Hey,
Okay.
Amanda.
Yes.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
So back up on that error adjustment.
Yes.
So just to make numbers simple so that I can understand, if on the acquisition, if somebody purchased something and it was 10,000 and it should have been 11,000 and they put an error adjustment in for 1,000, is it now reflecting beginning value of 11, or is it remaining at 10 and then they're adding in the 1,000 to come up with 11,000 for the ending? Does that make sense?
Yes. I'm not sure off the top of my head, because I just don't want to tell you wrong. Michelle, I know you're on here. If you have thoughts, please let me know, but also no pressure too. Because I know Michelle was just talking about some ways that error adjustment was used in the inventory training that we had. Michelle, what do you think?
Should, Vicky, it should show that adjustment, or should show that difference on the adjustment column, if I understood your question
Okay,
correct.
so the beginning value would still remain at 10, and then there would be an adjustment of 1,000, and skipping all the middle columns, the adjustment
Correct.
for 1,000 for an ending balance of 11.
Because you had marked that error adjustment flag on there, correct. If you didn't, then it would show, on, if it was an acquisition that you created to, change the original cost amount, and you didn't check mark the error adjustment, then it's going to show up on the acquisition column. And if you really don't want it to show that it was something that was done this year, then you want to make sure that the error adjustment is checked.
Okay, but the beginning balance, the beginning value will remain the same as
Yes, it
what it
should. It
should.
shouldn't
Okay,
be, yeah, because then that beginning balance is no longer agreeing with the ending balance from the prior year. So yeah, that should stay
okay,
intact.
okay, perfect. All right. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks, Michelle. Good question. Good question. Yeah. And if anybody hasn't watched Michelle's training from, was it last week, I believe, but it was inventory lesser knowns, and she gave you know, she talked about the error adjustments there. And I think there was even another one like with yeah, updating or when an item becomes capitalized that wasn't previously capitalized. So anyways, lots of good information there. Definitely recommend checking out that recording if you missed that one. Okay, so let's see. So that was our bug fixes. And then we had some improvements as well, and the improvements were to the audit report. So all of these things happened with the audit report. So let me oh yeah, you know what? We'll just talk about these ones. So first, the date range fields are no longer required if a tag field has been populated. So so when you run the inventory report, I actually love that you can run it by tag number, which is super convenient. But because, I mean, the audit report can be huge, you know, it can be like, it goes, you know, it's all of their history. So in general, the audit report was requiring start and stop dates so that no one accidentally would run it, you know, for all time and then be stuck there waiting for a super large report. However, if you're running it for a specified tag number, then obviously it's a lot, you know, it's narrowed down to just the data for that tag number. So what happens now with this update is when you enter the tag number in, it can recognize you're running it for one tag. You no longer are required to have to put in the start and stop dates. You can run all time for that tag number very easily now. The tag number parameter is also no longer case sensitive. So if, you know, just typing it in, especially, you know, if they have new alpha characters in there, it doesn't have to be, you know, uppercase. So that was updated. Oops, sorry. And then the fiscal year or tag number will always be shown in the appropriate column, even if the data has been deleted. So yeah, this is something that I came across recently actually but right before we had put out this update. But so what happened, so what was previously happening is like if you were looking for something that was deleted, running it for the certain tag number, then like how the records looked on the audit report is they were there, like the record of it being deleted was there on the audit report. However, because that transaction no longer actually had a tag number, that column with the tag number was pulling as blank, which obviously can be inconvenient. So that was fixed. So now, even if the data has been deleted, even if you have a deleted item, then when it pulls the audit report, it'll show you the tag number that it was associated with before being deleted. So that is helpful. Corrected a problem where modified fields were being shown as null. So again, null kind of means blank, but that was showing a certain way on the audit report. And then we also corrected filtering by a username. So when you run that report, there's a drop down where if you wanted to, you know, pick from the list a username to see just updates made by a specific user, that will properly filter now. Okay. And you know, I told you this one was going to come up again. Also to inventory, we implemented the mini orange MFA integration. Again, here's a link to that integration guide for those wanting to use that. And that would help if you're an ITC that self-hosts to configure it. That's where you want to go. All right, and then last for me here, an internal update for inventory as well. We added a REST version endpoint that includes organization, name, and ID. So something in the background there that we are working on to have that set. Okay, any questions about inventory before we move on? All right. All right, Andrea, all you.
Thank you, Amanda.
No problem.
All right, so let me get my screen to share here. Where do I go here? Why can't I find it? Nope. Trying to find where, oh, here. There we go. Okay. Good morning. We're going to be going over the payroll part of the releases for September. And let me get my screen over there so you can see it. There we go. Okay. So inventory. There we go. Payroll. All right. So in September, we had 3 regular releases, and we had 2 hot fixes for a couple districts. So the first ones we'll be going over are the bug fixes. The first one was we noticed that the payment transaction status report was not showing, it was showing all the direct deposits for an employee. So it was kind of like adding each line up for each deposit. So if they had a pay distribution of 3 different direct deposits that they were going into, when they were running the report, it was showing all 3. So it was inflating the gross and the total net for the employees. So that has been fixed. So now when they run the report, they're only going to see 1 line for the total. The next one is the attendance import. There was a bug that when they were using the import and on their Excel spreadsheet, it was not rounding the configuration correctly. So now when they run it, whatever the district has set up under their configuration for rounding the unit decimal positions. So if they have that set to 3 or 2, it just depends how they want their rounding. It's going to look at that. So I have a spreadsheet here that I will do a test on. So here I have an employee that set up 4.25 of overtime. I left the rate blank. And then I'm going to go ahead into my attendance, choose my file. I have a lot of files. And then get out of there. So again, you can use current or future, whichever you are working on at that time. I'm going to use future for now. And then I'm going to go ahead and import it. So my record's loaded. So now when I go to future and look at him, the rate was times. So originally his unit amount on his compensation was 243.902. And if he times that times the 1.5%, it automatically throws the rate in there, which is the 365,853. And then when he takes that times 0.25, you get your 9146. So that has been fixed now. Okay. My screen go. All right. I lost my screen. There it is. Okay, found it. All right. All right. And then the next one was for ESS. There was an issue with the payslip file leak. So that's been corrected. And I believe that was the improvement that they did. That then this bug here was introduced with this payslip. So now on ESS, the filtering for the filters for the pay date and number, payment number will now be greater than or equals to the comparison. And it will always be sorted by the pay date descending. So that improvement, and then this bug fixed that was introduced. Again, on the improvements, there was districts were not able to delete any issue or delete on their onboarding if they had an issue. When an invalid date is included on the employee record, which seemed to be happening quite a lot. So the developers went ahead and now the admin, you at the ITC can, and then also any standard users at the district can now delete that workflow to start over. So now that has been added. The next one is compensation position. They just did an improvement. They converted the report to EMS from a custom field. So now if your districts use mass load for position or compensation, they want to make sure they change that header to report to EMIS, exactly like this. If they do any mass loading to load in their employees that way. Again, I updated it on the mass load documentation to show that this has changed to this header now. Okay. The next one is new features. Again, as Amanda says, the ESS. Again, you can go to the guide here for any self-host to set that up. And then the next one is the reports, W-2 Social Security verification. So we got this added before W-2 time. So we'll go here. So now you will be able to find this under reports and down here under W-2 corrections. So now this has been added. So what you can do is you will create the submission file first. And you probably want to do this before you start your W-2s, or I guess you can probably do it now if you want to get ahead of the game if your districts want to. And generate that submission file. So this is kind of what it will look like. Again, this is my test data, so it just has, but this is kind of what your file will look like with your social security numbers and such. So then what you'll do is take that file and send that to your SSA to verify, make sure all the social security numbers are numbered before you start your W-2s or even when you're doing WSC corrections. Now, once you get that file back, and I do have one that came back. So here kind of is just a test file. This is kind of what you'll get back then from, oh, sorry, that's not it. That's the result file. Let me try this again. I can find it. I don't have it. Thought I had it up. Sorry about that. Here we go. So I guess you get a file back like this, your test verification result file. And what you do is take that file then that you get back from SSA and you load it into your results report. So when you take that file and upload it and put that into the system and then you generate the W-2 report, then you'll get a CSV file like this. So now it will show if you had any verified, if not on file, or name matches, date of birth doesn't match, you will get that file so you can then verify to make sure that all your social security numbers and the information was correct before you move on to starting your W-2s. So hopefully that'll be very helpful then when the districts start doing their W-2s. Again, on our appendix, I did add that to our checklist for calendar year end. And I put that right at the top here so that way districts know that they should do that right away. So that way that's added. And I also did add it in the W-2C just in case that they need to, if they're doing any Social Security updates or anything, I just put that on there that's an option if they want to go ahead and run that at that time. So, okay. And you got to find my file or my screen again. There we go. So those were the two new that were added, and we do have our documentation again, explaining each one and what the steps are, out there. And then the last thing we have are our patches. Again, these were patches done for a couple of districts that had some issues that the developers had to go in and correct for that district. Okay. Is there any questions on the September releases? Not too in-depth, really. So,
Andrea, I do.
yes,
Yeah, hey, sorry, honey. Up where they did the change on the custom field,
yes,
impeccable timing, because I was working with the district this morning on some EMIS stuff. And you recall how we had advised or recommended to districts that they could go into those custom fields and update like the position and the compensation to say position reportable to EMIS, compensation reportable to EMIS on the custom fields. That way it showed up. That way if they ever pulled it into a grid or something, it was just easier to see which record that related to.
okay,
Well, I'm noticing that since that release came out, it has stripped that off. I just went out as you were talking to several of our districts because I found it this morning and I've not been able to report it yet. But again, out in system and custom field, where if we had added the word position in front of or compensation in front of, yep,
okay, okay,
yep. So if you go here and I filtered to EMIS in here, like with my percentage sign front and back.
okay,
Yep, sorry.
I probably only, there we go.
Perfect. Yep, that's perfect. So see right there, so you have your compensation applies to in your position. We had gone into those and added the words compensation in front of reportable and position in front of reportable. Well, since the release, it is now stripped those off. Like if you go into the more options, and it's not showing in the more options properly, and it's also not showing on the grid properly, compared to what they added here before the release.
Okay,
So it did add, I noticed it did add the CF to it. So this morning I was playing around. I'm like, all right, maybe I just need to take it out and re-add it or do that kind of thing. And nothing that I changed in here would update it like it would before. If we changed it in here and did a refresh, then we could see it in the more option, correctly. We could see it in the grid correctly and see it on a report correctly.
okay, so you're saying if I go here.
Yep.
And then I add like the property name or the display
in-
name?
Yep, all we were having to ever do was add it in the display name and then it updated the property name as soon as you saved it. So like in front of this one, I'm not sure which, yeah, position and then, yep. And if you saved it before the release, it would update that bottom, the property name on its own. Like it went ahead and just
On
added
here?
that in there.
Okay,
Then you could go back to that position grid and you would see it reflected there. But now it's not, it has stripped them off and it's not showing now.
so now it's doing,
It's not even doing that. It's not adding it down there. I even went in and added it and tried it that way and it still wasn't showing.
okay, so it shows here, but when you go to the actual position, it's not showing
Exactly.
that.
Yeah. You go to position and you go to either the more, or you even look at that field on the position record itself. It's not carrying that reflection.
Okay.
And thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just happened to
No,
see
no,
it
that's
this morning and I
fine.
wanted to know if anybody else had seen it.
So you're saying here it would update that and say position?
Correct. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. If you change that custom field, you can immediately, after a refresh, see that there and in the more option under the EMIS related fields.
Okay, I wonder if it's because they changed it from a custom. It's probably why, because it's no longer a custom field.
Which I
All
know
right,
when
we'll
we had
have-
this.
I'm sorry?
No, you're fine. I know when we
I
had.
will have to ask Mark about that
Yeah.
and see if if that's something that's no longer going to be available to be changed since they did this update.
I know we asked on, or at least I did, ask on a prioritization meeting, what about when you go to make these changes? What about those that have already made this correction, or made these adjustments? Are those going to be saved? And so I know that question was addressed when they were going to do these. But now it's just going to kind of take a step back and make it harder to identify which
Which is,
which reportable to EMIS relates to which record, right?
okay, and for some reason, I'm thinking that they had mentioned that, that they will not be able to tell which header it is, if I'm recalling correctly.
Right. Now, if they go in and like make a fix to what they just did, adding that prefix, right, of position and compensation, then that's an easy fix, right, to do that, to those, to identify which record. But right now we're back to where we can't
You can't
easily
tell.
identify which one unless we go into the record.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I will ask the developers on that. It's a good question.
Okay.
And I'll see maybe what they are going to, if that's not going to be a possible thing or will be.
And I can go ahead and send in the ticket and the
Yeah.
screenshots and stuff I have if that's going to be helpful,
Yeah,
Andrew.
that will be helpful. That'd be great. And then that way I
Good.
can send them directly. Once I get the ticket, I can, they can look over that, each, in the software to see if that's possible. So,
Okay. Thanks so
okay, thank you.
You're welcome, honey.
Is there any other questions for today? All right, thank you. And I will pass it over to Michelle then. I gotta stop sharing.
Thanks, Andrea.
You're welcome. There we go.
Okay, good morning, everybody. All right, are we ready to go over the ESS updates that took place in September? And we have quite a few. I'm not going to go through everything, especially the internal type of backend things that the user isn't seeing, because we have so many, but here were the hot fixes and releases that we did in September. And before I do anything, yeah, move my chat over here in case we get questions. All right. And so what I did is in the categories like bug fixes, improvements, I broke it down, categorized them, so it's just a little easier to read because there are so many. Because we released quite a bit in September. And so that way it makes it a little bit easier to read. And what I did also is I added the JIRA issue number at the end. I didn't link it. I left them on here for me to look them up, just, and so I thought, you know what, it'd be helpful for you guys too. So that if you do want to see more information about that particular JIRA issue, like I said, I didn't link them, but you can go in and look that up in JIRA and look up that particular issue. Some of the issues have detailed information. One thing too, when you're looking up JIRA issues too, is to look at the testing notes that the developers put out there. Sometimes the descriptions, there isn't too much on them. And it just depends on if it's a quick change, a simple change, a back-end change that doesn't affect the UI, what the user sees. But looking at their testing notes is helpful because it's, the other developers are testing what that developer was working on. And that kind of helps too. It helps us. That's what we do in order to learn the option better and get more familiar with it, is to go into that JIRA issue and actually take a look at it. So I will leave these out here. And that way, if you do want more information, you can access JIRA and look that up. So let's get started here. What we're seeing. So the bug fixes, and I'm going to go into ESS on some of these to kind of show you maybe a few of the bug fixes, but more of the improvements. Bug fixes, the employee profile. Back in August, the ability to post data change requests, which is that kind of the first two that we're looking at here. These are both involving data change. We temporarily disabled that back in August. I think it was version 2024.6. And it was due to an issue where the data was being sent to USPS. We found an issue with that. Wasn't updating things properly in USPS. So we turned that off to where they could not post data change requests into USPS directly. And then we did go in and open that back up and allowed that on the 2024.11 release, which is our last regular release, our most recent regular release that we did back on Friday, I think. And so I think that was issue 871 where we opened it back up. But in between that time, we also went in and made some changes, just some bug fixes, I should say, on some of the information that took place in there. I think that first one there, I think when someone was attempting to create a data change request, the user was receiving some kind of validation failure error message, but it didn't indicate what field it failed on. So we fixed that on 868. And then the correcting of conditionals when handling the ethnicity checks, that was updating that on its own. So we fixed that so it stays intact, and that was on 962. And we'll get down to more of the data change improvements when we get down to the improvement area. But those were two of the bug fixes that we fixed while that data change request posting to USPS was disabled. The leave requests. So I kind of grouped all leave request related bugs together here. And so on this first one, it says on the leave request form, handle missing user profile. It was causing an error. So this had to do with the professional leave request forms. They were receiving a null pointer exception error about the employee profile not being there. And so we fixed that. Also on the leave request form, the subcategory may not exist, causing errors. This was, I think, specific to one district, is what we found out. And what was happening is that the subcategory was set on the sick leave. They entered in sick leave and they had a subcategory, but there was no subcategory for sick leave. There was really a subcategory for, I think, personal leave. And so we had to hot fix that. I think it was on the 8.1 release in order to fix that one. The next one, the leave expense details, allowing users to edit the budget account and other expense details after approval. So, if something happened, the user goes in and creates maybe it's usually a professional leave request, right? When you're talking about the budget accounts, adding that. It's that leave expense information that's showing the bottom of that professional leave form. And so what we needed to do is allow them to go in after it's approved and actually allow them to go in and change the budget accounts information if they need to. And that makes sense. If, the leave manager needs to say that's the wrong budget account, I need to change it. So we fix that so that they can go in and make those changes. All right. The next one, that was a back-end change. I'm not even going to worry about that one and talk about that. But the last one, the district leave request, what happened with this is that we were receiving a bunch of tickets about this one where really no one could go in and view a leave request. Admin people couldn't, supervisors couldn't approve leave requests because they couldn't view them first. So obviously want to view them before they approve them, but they couldn't view them. And so what they were getting was like the stack trace error saying, what was it? Equal is not allowed, use is null. And so we sent out an SSDC notice on that one. And letting everyone know that we are looking into it. We're going to get a hot fix on it. But yeah, basically, you went in and tried to view a leave request, whether you're an admin role, approver role, even the user, after they created a leave request, was getting this error, the stack trace error. And so we did fix that. The bug was created from the 11.0 release, and we hot fixed it just a few days ago on the 11.2. So that was taken care of. But we appreciate the prompt response from you guys on those tickets, though, because then we have there's 2 or 3 that come in. We're like, all right, we got to notify everybody to let them know that this is something we're aware of and that we're cleaning up. So that was taken care of. So those were kind of the leave request related bug fixes. Under leave management, we improved the blackout date validations. They were receiving incorrect blackout date error. So that was fixed on 8/78. And then on the leave request export, handling missing appointment types. If an appointment type was missing on the position, they were getting an error. So we fixed that. That was hot fixed on 10.1. And then correcting sorting for export leave history and the revert leave details. The sorting wasn't working real great on that one. I'm going to go in, show you that one. I got to show you one of these bugs, right? And I think this user is a leave manager. And under the leave management here, I'm sorry, under leave requests. I'm sorry, under leave management is the wrong one. Export leave history. And so in here, right here, we fix these so that they're sorting properly. They weren't sorting all that great. And also, if you did need to go in and revert, and it's not a very good one, but if I had several leaves on this revert, also the sorting in here was fixed. So that makes a little more sense. And it's easier than to select the actual leave request that you want to revert. So that was one of the big bugs that we fixed on there. With timesheets, this first one was a behind the scenes thing, but the second one handled timesheet configuration options. There were some options in here. I'm going to go into timesheets and show you talking about here. And I'm going to go into the actual configuration options in timesheets. I'm going to go down to, I gotta log out of Pam, get into my admin account. And go into, excuse me, configuration and the timesheet configuration here. So they improved this. These 2 options right here, they weren't setting up correctly like they should have. They weren't working as well as they should have. So they fixed that in order for that. The reason required for overtime items is enforced, and the time entry precision when they're going in and entering in that stuff, what is it incrementing on their timesheet? So those were fixed in order to work a little bit better. And also other options here regarding timesheet, the period close job, that was a bug. It wasn't always creating the next period consistently. So we fixed that on 8/62. And handling of the timesheet holidays. So when creating a timesheet, if a holiday is found, it was fixed to no longer create a regular line item. Instead, it's going to replace it with a holiday line item. So that was fixed as well, so that it records that as a holiday line item on the timesheet. So those were the timesheet bugs that were done. And then just some miscellaneous ones. I think we've talked about the thread leaks that were happening in the applications. So those were fixed. These all should be over on the left here. Sorry about that. I'll fix that. The kiosk subcategory loader. That was another one where we were just having an issue when they were trying to import subcategories via the import load option. So that was fixed. The reset password dialog overflow, what was happening there on some mobile devices, if the user was trying to go in and reset their password to their ESS user account, the password box wasn't showing properly. And so that was fixed on 7/44. The supervisor leave calendar entries should be based on the job status. So in the system manager or in the system options underneath the configuration, there's a job status configuration that has active, deceased, inactive, terminated, and the leave calendar entries weren't filtering them. They weren't displaying them properly on the supervisor leave calendar. So that was fixed. That was another bug that was fixed. And then that last one for bugs was a subcategory selection showing on the leave request form when blank and no subcategories are available for the leave request. Okay, so what that basically means is when viewing or editing a leave request, that subcategory combo box was visible on the form, even though there wasn't a subcategory for that particular leave type. So we made sure that, it's working consistently now, depending on the leave type you select, if the subcategory box is displayed or not, and it should display that properly. If there is a subcategory for that leave type, it should display. If there isn't, you shouldn't see a subcategory box. So that was all fixed on 9/59. So those were our bugs that we, I don't know, when I look over them, there aren't any in that month, but those are the things that we fixed that were considered bugs in the last month. And so if you guys don't have any questions about the bugs, I'll move on to the improvements. Seeing any in chat? I'll show you some of these improvements here in ESS. And so again, any leave related type of improvements I kind of group together and have the JIRA issue at the end of them. So with leave calendars, this was a huge request. It was, I think, a feedback request that's been moved over. And just to add to that, they have been moving based on the ESS feedback survey survey that went out to the prioritization working group. Those results came back, and I haven't seen those results personally, but I can see that the development team has been moving some of those feedback issues into the core project. So that's great news that, a lot of those that we've had a lot of times requested on them, they've been moving them over and making them core projects. And so they'll be scheduled for a future release. So, so that will be good news for the end users. And one of those was changing the color to soft black. I like how they worded that, soft black, for any leaves that were exported. And I think I can show that in here. So let me go close out of here. And if I go to leave calendars and district leave calendars, just kind of look here, see if I've got any. Oh, here's some soft black. So these are just an indication that these leave requests have been exported. So that was taken care of. Also the, up here. The next two are kind of tied together. What we were encountering, or people were getting errors when trying to enter in a lengthy comment or leave expense on the professional leave form. There's a purpose of leave. So on those leave forms, we increased the amount of characters that can be in those boxes. And I'll just bring up a leave form here. I got to go into a certain user here in order to see that. Pick on Cat. And in here, then, if I go into my leave requests and create a leave request, and I'm just going to pick on professional. But what I'm talking about is the comments, the sub comments, and here underneath the leave expense information, this purpose of leave description. So people were, entering in a bunch of information in there and it wasn't handling it well. So what they've done is they increased the length of these boxes to up to 4,000 characters. So I think we should be good on those now. So that was considered an improvement on the leave requests. Back here. So that was, these two right here. The leave analysis, I'll go into that. We added an employee archived flag to that. So if I go back in here and I go to, I'll pick, since I'm in here, I'll go pick on the supervisor leave analysis. And if I go over to the more column here, there's an employee archived area now. And so if they do not want archived employee information appearing on the grid, they can disable that. And so those USPS employees that are archived will not display on this grid. So that's one way of kind of helping filter this down a little bit. And I know while we're in here, I know we've had some questions about this staff leave request analysis, and there's also a district leave request analysis and just how this operates. And I may have gone over this last recap, but I'm going to do it again. So basically what this is basically doing, and I know I'm probably pick on the supervisor here, because I know she's got some stuff in here. And so under the supervised leave analysis, here we go. So in here, what this is doing is you kind of have to look at the top first. You don't want to look at the whole screen because it will confuse you. So you want to look at the top first. And this is basically showing the supervisor their staff's leave balance information. And so there's a lot of columns on here. So I would recommend that the supervisors, just go over to more and just, check, the ones that they don't ever look at, maybe the max leave, maybe they don't really need that. The leave unit, they know everyone's daily, so they could remove some of this, clean it up, and just see, that their leave balances, where are they at, and just make this not as cluttered. And so once they do that, then let's say, they say, okay, Levi, I see, he's got a leave balance of 89.75. I want to see his leave balances. So I want to see the leave requests, and not just the leave information, the balances. So if I click on them, I can go and then say, see leave for selected, and it's going to bring up all of his leave requests, obviously. But if I want to see just his sick information, I can go in here and filter this by just his sick leave. And then I can see all of his sick leave requests. So I know that some of them have been asking, can I see the sick leave balances on the approval grid and stuff like that? And I know we've got issues for those, and that's fine, but this is another way for them to get that. And then they can go and export this into a CSV file if they need to. So I just kind of want to show that again, that, you start here, you select who you want. If you want to see their leave requests, then click see leave for selected, throws the leave request down here, and then you can filter. And in either of these grids, you can export and put it into a spreadsheet. Okay. The next thing here regarding improvements, blackout dates. They did improve this a little bit. And I think I went over like the whole blackout dates. And if you created a blackout date, but you have an existing leave request, that, it can go and cancel those automatically after that blackout date is created. But we had that out on, I think it was, this is kind of in conjunction with FERA issue 722 and 789 that went out prior to this. And this was like the last of those improvements on the blackout dates that needed to be done. And this issue was 818. So this just basically ensured that, all of that is working correctly. But yeah, those three issues kind of fixed any, or improved anything in that blackout date area under the leave management options. Also adding the appointment type and subcategory columns. This was a request that everyone, we had a lot of people, I think it may have been a feedback request, and we moved it over to a core project. But under the export leave, when you export leave and you create a CSV file, you use that option. Just go in there. I need to go back into my leave manager here. And if I'm just going to pick on a certain period here, let's pick on the month of August. Oh, okay, I'll just pick on all those. And when I go in here then and click on export leave request, obviously I have these two options. And again, this is another thing we're running into, is that we've had tickets where they're saying, you know, they did the projection. The CSV file is not a projection. This isn't a method. These are both methods. So a district is able to go in and use the CSV file to export the leave requests into a CSV file that they can then import into USPS manually, or they can use the direct to USPS option, and it will directly post any of the selected leave that's showing here into USPS. Now, I know I keep adding things on, but this is helpful information. We have had a few reports of tickets saying that leave's been posted twice. And some of it has to do with maybe being a little trigger happy with this export option. They did it's always seems to be the direct to USPS. They go ahead and select this one, they click on export, they click it again, is it working? And it may post that leave twice. That's just one thing we're trying to figure out, because we're trying to figure out why those are being posted twice. It could be an ASAP issue as well. So each ticket we're looking at separately to determine what exactly is going on. But what we are going to do to prevent if it's getting posted twice, because it's trying to export it, it's thinking, and then they do the export again. We're going to, while it's thinking, disable this, gray it out until that is done posting to USPS, so they don't accidentally post the same leave request again into USPS. So like I said, that's something I believe we're going to get out pretty quickly here. And so basically they go in, click on export, this gets grayed out. We may have a little, spinning wheel or something until it completes and posts into USPS, because they should get a resulting CSV file too, a report to show what was posted. And then once it's done posting and it's complete, then this will be enabled again. These should be cleared out because they were just exported. And they should no longer be on the grid, and then they can move on, to, the next time that they need to export. But yeah, that's something that we're definitely cleaning up. But anyways, in here, and I do have a file already, I believe, here. Let me go down here, take a look. Yes, I do. Oh, maybe that's the wrong one. But anyways, in there, what it should show now on that CSV file is it should also include the appointment type and a subcategory. Those are new columns that are on that CSV file that gets generated. Okay. There. The next one here is adding the approval trail tab to the leave approval forms. And so what this has to do with, under the leave request approvals, And that's the leave request approval, not the under my leaves and, viewing, your existing leave request. This is under a supervisor, their leave request approval. They're now able to see that audit tab on there. So I think before it had just the first two tabs and it didn't have the audit trail tab. They're able to see that now, the leave request approval grid. So leave request approval. And so in here, if I went in and viewed, one of these, this is what's appearing now. So that was an improvement. The next one was improving the label for district leave extract button. And so, yeah, what was happening here is that, I'm still in the leave manager here. And if I go into the leave requests and I go into view district leave, what was happening here is that it had export grid items up here. And, but when you click on it, it's actually taking you to the export leave requests option. And they're like, whoa, wait a minute, I just wanted to get a CSV file of my district leave requests. Well, that's not what the intended purpose was for that. So we renamed this to show, the real functionality, to its real functionality. They can go in and, look up this information, but if they want to then go in and, go into the export leave request option, it'll take them right over to that area. That's what it does. So it doesn't extract that information out into a CSV file. And that's basically what that supervised leave analysis and that district leave analysis will do. Those options, you can export that information out. But yeah, this, this option is definitely just going and moving it into that export leave request. Okay, let's see. This last one here, will they add an option to export to a CSV file? In that option, Nancy, I don't believe so, because that is really handled on the district leave request analysis and the supervisor leave request analysis. We have those options available there to export that out. So I don't believe that that's going to be something that they're going to change. I'll look to see if maybe we have a feedback issue on that, but as far as I know, it's intended to go in and take them right directly to the leave request export menu when you click on that. Okay. So those are I think I got them all. Oh, no, I didn't. I have one more here. The blackout date escalated flag will cause leave request to notify leave manager. Okay. So this is something that was just updated, I think on the 11.0, and I just updated the documentation yesterday. And we're behind on documentation. We got a lot of stuff that still needs to be updated, but this one we did get updated yesterday. And what this means is I'm going to go back to, I'm still in my leave manager, and I'm going to go to the blackout dates here. And I'm just going to be one of these. And it used to say elevated, and now it used to say, I'm sorry, not elevated, escalated here. And we changed that, and the behavior has changed as well when we did that. So what this means is, and we used a tooltip in here as well, that on this blackout date, if it's blackout date is allowed, a leave request is allowed to be created for a blackout date. You can restrict those in the configuration screen. But if you are allowing leave requests to go to be posted for this blackout date, and you have this checked, what this means is that it's going to go and send an email to any users with the leave manager role. And it's just sending them an email saying, hey, this person created a leave request on this blackout date. So And I know some of you had asked, well, what does that do with the supervisors? And, people have to prove it. It doesn't change any of that. Those, that person creates a leave request on a blackout date. The leave request emails, notifications are still going to go to the supervisors, to whoever's on that approval workflow. But it's also going to send an email to the leave manager. So they know basically that somebody did create a leave request. And if the supervisors, do approve it, not knowing that maybe they shouldn't, what the leave manager can do then can go in here and cancel it by going into their options and underneath the leave their leave manager role and cancel that leave request if they need to. So it is something that has changed a little bit, but it doesn't change the workflow structure at all. I think the escalated did, so it doesn't behave the same way as it did.
Michelle?
Heidi, do you have a question? Yes.
I do, thank you, and I'm sorry. I have a district that, and Pat's been working with me, and she's been incredibly gracious to get what the district is desiring. So I guess I need to find some type of a resolution or fix that I can tell them that it may not work the way it did in kiosk. So their blackout dates, they're one of those districts that ultimately the head of HR gets to approve whether it's a valid reason for them to take off on a blackout date. For example, a professional day, right? That would be considered a blackout date for them. And if they had some extenuating circumstance, the HR director is the only one, not the supervisor, that can override that. Well, the problem is in kiosk, they could have the blackout dates, it would allow them to put it in, but they also flagged it as escalated, which meant notifications went to, or the supervisors knew, but they never got the opportunity to approve. The only person that could approve was the head of HR. He was the only one. So that's where their pain point is right now. They don't want supervisors approving. They don't want, they wanted to skip the middleman completely and go right to that head guy. Is there any talk that can be? And Pat was great. She just sent me, and God love her, I started an email back to her before we started the session today. I know that the supervisor can approve, can do that stuff, but I'm not sure that's going to make the district happy. Just for simple reasons of, well, my supervisor said I could, why did you not say I could? Even though that's a business rule at their district. So is there any talk of that?
I don't think we have that. I mean, this just came out, so it is kind of fresh and new. So, I could take a look. I don't know if we've got anything out there regarding that, but I mean, I'm just thinking, okay, if the lead manager, gets the notification, and if they're set up in the district where the lead manager gets the email and the lead manager goes in and escalates the approval, that's going to bypass the supervisor altogether. It's
It
just
will,
that
but
it's a timing issue, right?
it
Yeah.
is, exactly. What if the supervisor sees it before the HR? And I know that's going to be my feedback from them. Is it something
Right.
that there could be a special role that completely, when that leave, that the only person that has that, or only people that have that, or I don't know. I don't know what the fix is, but and I'm going to suggest this to the district, but I know that they're going to ask me, this isn't what kiosk did. Are we going to get this one day? So.
Well, I will make note of this. And and Heidi, if you could send a ticket on it too, so we can track it.
Yep,
That
I
would
already
be
have one
great.
in. Yep, I will.
Great.
I'll make sure of it. Thank you. And I
Oh, I'm
appreciate
sorry.
Tanya.
I have that one with Pat. Yeah, I got it.
That's
Gotcha.
okay. That's okay. No, and I appreciate Pat saying she has a district like that too. I had never heard of such a thing, but okay, we're finding out. We don't know what the districts do, right? Until we start, changing things. And that's what we find out. But thank you for your grace and Pat's. I appreciate you both most sincerely. Thank you.
No problem. I know that's what we're finding out too, Heidi. How they're using this how they used kiosk and how, they're using ESS and the challenges that they're having with that. But, everyone had to get and get their feet wet. So, we'll definitely see, if that's something that, can be improved. So I'll let you know. Okay, I think that is all the leave related improvements that we made. I want to go down to some of these user ones. I think one of them is kind of a back end internal thing, so I'm not going to cover that. But the first one, adding the group chain to the workflows. This was something that what this does is when we were in the approval group trail, and I can go in there. I don't know if I really showed you. So if I am in the leave request approval and I'm looking at, let's say, one of Casey's here and the approval trail, it is going to, we kind of improve this so that they can see, actually the workflow chain. And if there were, changes made to the workflow chain, it would say edited group chain or edited group. And that type of information is going to appear on the leave request approval trail. So that's an improvement that we made to the group chains on here to reflect that. Also, with an improvement that we made, this next one is kind of an internal one. This is sync to absence management property on the user form. So this one is part of, go log out of CAMS and go into my admin account. And underneath users, and I'm just going to view one here, and I believe we have absence management turned on. We do. There is a sync to ASAP that is now added to the user grid. And so just indicating, is this particular user synced to ASAP? And so one thing we've done, and I know we've been working and adding and changing the ASAP integration information. We're trying to keep up with the changes, and based on some of the things or changes that Frontline's done that we need to make updates in ESS for. But one thing that we want to show you is, and we've tried to improve this, and I know we'll probably be needing to improve it again, is underneath the employee self-service documentation in the user manual, and I'm going down to our appendix where you guys have all been several times, I'm sure. Under the conversion guidelines, we have discussed, added stuff on here, and we've really enhanced the whole turning off the kiosk absence management integration, that part. But the one thing that we really improved upon was kind of the ESS absence management integration options. And one of those steps in here is to make sure that your users have their sync to ASAP flag marked to true. That's one of the things that needs to be done. So if it isn't marked to true, you can go into, and it says right here, you can edit the user manually and check mark the sync to absence management. So when I view a user, there's a little checkbox in there, and I can click on that. Or you can do a mass update by going in and exporting this and then manually changing the flag to true, and then importing it back in via our system mass load option. Okay, so that basically that enhancement here was made so that they're able to tell if a user has been synced to ASAP. So that's what that's all about. The group, we did add a validation, and I know we had a couple tickets about this, trying to add a group, and I'm getting an error. And when I look at the group, it just has maybe a view with notify. but it doesn't have an actual approver on it. You're going to get an error if there isn't an approver. It needs at least one approver in order for that group to be created. And then the last one here, this is basically, it's like a one-to-one user form validations to prevent multiple users from being linked to the same USPS MID. So it's a one-to-one relationship. There should be one ESS user to one employee in USPS. So we made improvements there to prevent anything from preventing multiple users with the same USPS record. So that was improved. With timesheets, we did notice that, timesheets, you can receive email notifications for those, obviously, just like you can with leave requests. But we noticed the MID was showing on those emails. And so we felt like, if they do have part of their social security number as part of the MID, we wanted to remove the MID from those emails, make it consistent with what we did with leave request emails. So that was cleaned up. The timesheet form, when adding a new line item on a timesheet form, I don't know how many of you have really been into timesheets a whole lot, but when you're going in and adding a new line item to a timesheet, let me get into my timesheet employee here and I can show you. And I'm just going to go in and just view one of these here, or I'm going to edit actually. And if I go in and create a new timesheet in here, what's going to happen is it isn't going to just to default to regular anymore. 9 times out of 10, it's an exception that they're trying to enter in here. And so that's where it's going to default to EXC. So that's what that update did. Let's see. I'm not going to worry about the holiday internal change. One thing too, when the automatic period generation are set up to create automatic timesheet periods, we added a new option to a weekly one. And so I know we have biweekly, monthly, so we added the option to do weekly. So that's going to be included in there and they can select on that. The timesheet export grid allows that the actual where you go in and export the timesheets. There is a period start date and ending date now in there. So they'll be able to sort by those columns in there. So that's what that's all about. The timesheet shift. So when creating a timesheet shift, and you have to be really careful when you say that, there's some back end improvements that were made. If I created a shift and I put, didn't watch my AM and PM and I put in from 8 PM to 12 AM or and it just the time period didn't jive. It gave some kind of bogus validation message, which wasn't very helpful. So they improved that so that it tells them why they're getting an error. And combine timesheet staff supervisor and timesheet approver roles. So after looking into this more, why do we have 2 separate roles for this? It really should be one. So they're basically merging the timesheet staff supervisor into the timesheet approver role. So same, those gonna have the same options or privileges in the system. But they just figure we don't really need 2 roles. We have plenty of roles already, so they're going to merge those. They merged those together in 893. So this filter position was kind of a back-end improvement. So what that's basically ensuring is that the employee on that timesheet is eligible to create a timesheet for. So it does go back there and just confirms in USPS and their position that the timesheet required flag is checked. So that just is a little improvement on that. And the timesheet export exceptions. Yes, this one I want to show you because what happens here, And I have to go in as my timesheet manager here, I believe is Pam. And under timesheet export, I'm just going to select a period here. And I know my periods are future, so you can just kind of ignore that. And so when I click on export timesheets, I have these 3 items, and the only export exceptions is that's what it will do. It'll only export exception related line items. So it wasn't working properly before, and so we made sure that it really wasn't even really working before. So we made sure that that's been improved. So it does reflect what's actually saying here. Only export exceptions, please. That's what it's going to do. And then the groups and group chains. This was I thought, a pretty cool feature, and I think it's going to be very useful, is for timesheets now. I have to log back into my admin for this one in order to go into the groups and group chains. And what you're going to see now underneath users, and like I said, it's for both of these. And I'm just going to go ahead and view teacher's aid one here. If I've got this set up for leave requests, if I want to take my, setup in here and copy it to timesheets, because I want the same group and group chains workflows for timesheets, I can click on copy to timesheets. And what it's going to do is it's going to ask me, are you sure you want to copy this group? And when I say yes, tells me that has been successfully copied. I close out of here, go to timesheets, and those teachers' aids are now in here with the same setup. So you can do the same thing with group chains as well. So if there's a certain group chain that I'm viewing and I want to go in and copy to timesheets, I can do the same thing. And then when I actually go to timesheets, then that group chain will be out there as well with the same settings. So that is pretty cool. I like that. Okay, let me see. I know there's a lot to cover, and I appreciate you guys going through this with me. So those are all of the timesheet updates that were made. And we're going to go down to absence management now. Absence management. Yeah, it's been on our we've had a lot of absence management questions, and I appreciate you guys' patience and understanding with all that, because we are adding things continually in ESS when it comes to the absence management integration. And what I want to really do in here, we had a couple absence management improvements, 825 and 930. And so basically, I want to talk about 930 first, and then I'll talk about 825. 930, what this is doing is it's removing the import loader option underneath kiosk imports. So if I go in and I'm in my administrative account, and I go down to system, and I go down to kiosk load, and I look at my kiosk load options, the absence management one isn't included anymore. And why isn't it included? Because it's pulling in all the old kiosk template IDs and stuff that you are not to be using, the district is not to be using. Part of our conversion guidelines is that they have to contact frontline support to get new templates for their absence management ESS integration. So why bring over the old stuff that you're going to have to clear out? So we have, no longer made that an option. And we did remove that from the conversion import steps and stuff. I know most of you're already past all of that. But we did just remove that so that there's no accidental of old kiosk template IDs being in there and wondering why is it working? And it's probably either because it has the old kiosk, or the new ones that were provided by Frontline weren't entered in correctly or entered in the wrong field. So, we are really working on trying to get a lot of that updated. And so, just looking at the, I have it in here, looking at the kiosk information and our, oh, why didn't we do that? But our integration steps, determining how to set it up. And then, down here, we go in then and talk about all the different options that are available and explaining some of the stuff that you're seeing in the absence management menu. That's where I'm kind of segueing myself into this next area here. And so this is where we're trying to make a lot of improvements. And we really, really want to have some kind of session here eventually. Once we get more information, our support staff is kind of learning as we go as well. And so we need to have a meeting with the devs and just talk about the whole ASAP integration and mainly what we're seeing in the absence management options here. And I know, they're continually updating and making changes to these. They have been for the last few releases. And that's one of them here was they added some improvements on the absence reasons and the school improvements. And so what I mean by that in here, if I go to the absence management and I go to the data import view, so this is one area that, will it's bringing over those leave requests from absence management, from ASAP. Let's just say ASAP. That's so much a mouthful as absence management. And it pulls that stuff over here and it just kind of gives you an update as to what was created. If an absence was canceled, we got a cancel tab. We've got, if an absence was updated in ASAP, it shows that, updated information in here. Obviously, the same leave request update is also going to be reflected in the employee's leave requests too, right? So they go into leave requests, my leave requests, they're going to see those updates. And then we've got these log files that are tied to updates and then any sub information as well. Those log files are in here. But what we would like to do is once we get a better handle on all this ourselves, the support staff, is have like just a round table, if you will, of these options in here. The data import view, the data sync options. We want to talk about those in a little more detail, as well as these then options there are grids that contain that information in here. And really, this is the newest one. This hasn't been out here too long, where it talks about that synced data. So again, if I go back to my data sync view and I do a school sync, then underneath the sync here, I've got the school sync information. We want to talk about these columns that you're seeing, what this stuff means. And we have been updating this. It is in the documentation, but it isn't complete yet because there are still things that, we need to have a conversation with the developers on, is just to make sure, that we're understanding that properly before we update the documentation. But this is kind of where we're at, is that there's a lot of information going on right now in these. So again, data sync view, absence reason sync. I can sync that manually for now. We're hoping that that will become an automated process. And then when I do then, this is basically the results of that sync. And it shows me, what matched and what didn't. And what recourse does that have if it isn't matched? So that's the type of training we want to have with you guys so that we all have a better understanding of the whole ASAP integration with ESS. So when I get to our schedule here, maybe we can kind of figure out, a time here where we can try to have a training about this. But yeah, so that's kind of what's going on with this now. Any of these data sync options, the results of that appear on this synced data view grids. So we got one for absence, school, and employee. This is brand spanking new. I don't think this is even on the release yet. I'm on a development version right now. So this is what the developers are currently working on. So we don't even have any of this documented because it's not out yet. The school and the absence reasons are. So hopefully that helps. I know I'm kind of like trailing off on some of this, but I think it's important to talk about. So yeah, so we did make some improvements on those sync to view grids. That was 825. And then, like I said, we removed that loader option, and that's been removed from the import steps as well. And that was 930. And just some miscellaneous improvements that were made. So the change forgot password, email, if it is an actual locked problem, what happens then when they click on the forgot password and they're like, I can't get in, so maybe it's my password. When they click on the forgot password option, they're going to get an email, the user, but the email is going to indicate your account is locked. So they need to read the email. And at that point, then they will need to contact the district because somebody has to manually unlock the user account in order for the user, to get back in. So that email notification was updated to state that. Also, this was, I think, a utilities configuration. That was an update on a bunch of different things. So that's behind the scenes. I'm not going to worry about that. Position details view. In the mobile option, I believe this has to do, no, I'm sorry. This is in the job status. So if I go in, and I think I have to go back in and log in as a user because it won't let me see the positions from there. So I'm just going to pick on Pam again. And under positions detail, we updated this to show the job status on the position. So this is something new that was added. Also, under the configuration options, for those, I know we've had requests where they just want the data change request. That would be this guy right here. They just want it turned off so that no one can see it and use it. So underneath the admin, and I go down to system and I go down to configuration and I go to the ESS functionality. We have added this data change request. So if I uncheck that and refresh, I go back in and log in as that user, I'm not going to see that option anymore under the employee profile to make data change requests. So that is something that can be turned on or turned off. Let's see what else we got here. The formatting of the compensation details on a mobile device, it wasn't looking well on the mobile device. It wasn't showing it completely. So they improved that. So if a person does log in and looks at their position information and their compensation details, it's reporting, it's showing things accurately now. So that was an improvement on 931 that we did. And then this again was just a background change that was made. And so those were the improvements that were made in ESS this past month. So any questions on those before I really just speed things up here on the last couple here? Okay, hearing nothing, awesome. The last thing, you guys are probably like cross-eyed by now. The last thing I want to talk about is just the new features, which as was, stated, Andrea and Amanda both said the mini orange integration. So it's something that they can integrate across all applications. This is basically a replacement for Duo. So it's just another option like Duo. So that's available. And we've got the installation guide for that. And also the timesheet configuration option. So for users to receive notification that their timesheets, that was added as well. And so that was on JIRA issue 900. So, and I think I can show you where that's at under the timesheet configuration since I'm in here. Oh, I'll block out of that. Here we go. And it's this option right here. When enabled, a user will receive an email notifying them if another user has edited their timesheet. So that's nice. You know, if the supervisor went in and made a change or something like that, the user is notified via email. And then the last thing are just some patches that were done, and these were specific to certain districts. So those were the ones in the JIRA issues tied to those. Okay. Also, just workflows. We also had some improvements that were made. So this is just showing the two releases. We had a regular and a hot fix on workflows as well. And nothing for the ITC management. Okay. So like I said, when it comes to our next training sessions here, we do have in October, we only have 2 Fridays with Fiscal because we are doing the SSDT direct sessions the 3rd week of October. So, you know, in order for our support staff to get ready for that, plus, you know, support training, and then, you know, we have 2 people going out on the road. We don't have as many this month. So we do have gap balancing at the end of the month, but I'm, you know, like I said, I'm trying, as long as we can get the information we need from the developers, you know, in a timely manner about the ASAP integration, I don't think it would hurt to have a session in between here, maybe schedule one here. It's gonna, with the way things are going, it's probably gonna have to be like closer to the end of the month. And have a Fridays with Fiscal on the ASAP integration. Once, you know, we can process this information more and understand those integration steps. So that is something you guys are, you know, wanting. I know it's probably best to do it in October because I know it's going to get real busy here in November with, you know, getting calendar year end ready. I know you guys have your calendar year end sessions in your districts as well. So if this is something you're interested in, you know, respond in the chat and let me know if you'd like to have some type of ESS ASAP integration, where we're basically talking about these options in the ASAP management menu. Yes, please, got one already. So yeah, I think it's important too. Otherwise, what we have next in November, like I said, we're gearing up for calendar year end. So, and we bumped them up because I know we had a request from some of you that you'd like our meetings to be earlier so that you have time then to prep and have your meetings with your districts, which is understood. So in November, we're going to have a USPS calendar year end review. And then November 1st and then the 8th, we're doing USAS. And then November 15th, we're actually doing the October recap. So that's going to be later since we moved up our calendar year end reviews. And yeah, and I think that's kind of where we're at right now. So there is supposed to be a newsletter coming out too. I'm hoping within the next week. I missed October, so it's going to, or I missed September, so it's going to be October newsletter. And it's going to have a feature article on ESS. So that's going to be the main part of it. But again, for those of you that, you know, have districts that are interested, please have them for the SST Direct, please have them register for those sessions that week of the 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. 22nd will be at Meta, 23rd will be at Maveka, and the 24th will be at SWOCA. So that's where those are at. So your districts may be interested. We'll do a full morning of USAS and a full afternoon of USPS. So we've got the agenda. It's out there in our fall link here. And so people can just click here to register and they should get a confirmation email and, we're hoping for a lot of attendees, hoping for a good response. And also this down here is showing what we're covering during those sessions. So, okay. If you guys don't have anything else, I'm sorry we took so long. This was a big one. And I'm afraid with ESS, it's not going to be shorter anytime soon on these recaps, but we appreciate you guys' patience and understanding through all of that. If you guys don't have anything else, any other questions? Thanks everyone for attending, and you guys all have a great weekend.